Good evening, everybody, and how are we doing? It is Sunday, the 23rd of April, 2023. And this evening, I want to find out your memories of gardening with your grandparents, your parents, or things like that. Subject I came up with last week because well, it is my birthday today, as some of you have already commented, but it would also be my nan's birthday as well. And it's got me thinking about the memories that I have with that. We'll get into that in just a moment. First of all, who have we got in the chat tonight? Ballycillian Allotment Man is out there saying, good evening, all. Turbo Stream, good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Toby Streamers wish me happy birthday. Thank you very much. Adrian is out there saying hello, good evening to you. Also saying happy birthday. Thank you. Nicola is out there. Evening, Richard and all. Good evening to you. Oracle Ards Allotment. What about everyone and my friend Stuart Jackson over on the other outlet? Hope you've had a good week. Is he out there? We'll find out in a moment. Philly SPB is saying hello, everyone. Good evening to you. Nigel, happy birthday, Richard. Hello, buddy. Hope you are well. Thank you very much. Jenny Hallett, hello, everyone. Hope you are well and have had a great week. I've sown 68 varieties of tomatoes today. Dreading potting on 68 varieties. That's almost the no, it's 59, isn't it? 59 a Heinz variety. Alex Novus is out there. Hello, everyone. Happy birthday. Thank you very much. Kate is out there. Good evening, Veg Army, and happy birthday to the legend that is Richard. Thank you very much. Stuart, hello all, with my friend Oracle Ards. Good evening to you. Jenny's wishing me happy birthday. Thank you very much. Rebecca, good evening, everyone. Hope you are well. Hargrave Gas, evening, everyone. Hope you've all had a great week. Rebecca also wishing me happy birthday. Thank you very much. So is Oracle now they've seen it. Thank you very much indeed. Anna Jones is out there. Good evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Stuart Jackson, hope everyone is doing well. I've spent the last 2 days sowing seeds and potting on. Aren't you lucky? Jenny Hallett, I am to be talking about these what do you call them, tomatoes. My dad is out there. Good evening and a happy birthday. Thank you very much, Dad. Anna Jones also saying happy birthday to myself and Sean Jones Cameron, his birthday as well. Scott Ambler also wishing me happy birthday and hello to everyone. Thank you very much. Chili Kate is out there. Good evening to everyone from the Chilies, and thank you very much. And Amanda's also wishing me happy birthday. Muddy Moose is saying Heinz 57. I knew it was there somewhere. 57 different varieties of tomatoes, I believe Heinz uses. Was it 57 different varieties of... No, it's tomatoes, isn't it? I'm trying. This year, I'm on a mission to try and grow my own cannellini beans, to make my own baked beans. I don't know if anybody else is trying that, but it's something I've always struggled to try and do in the past. This year, it might be different. Digwell is saying hi all. Good evening to you. Now, I saw this going through the comments. As I said, this week it's all about memories of gardening with your grandparents or your parents. And Stuart Jackson says, I can remember gardening with my dad. My first memory is being asked to weed the strawberries, but I never got asked again. Is that because you did something wrong, Stuart? Is that because you lifted all the tomatoes instead of the weeds, or what? Let us know in the comments. Now, as I said, it would be my nan's birthday today as well, and that's where I sort of got my mind thinking. My nan, I remember, always had a beautiful garden. My nan and granddad always had beautiful gardens, and the first house that I knew that they lived in was out in the middle of nowhere. And all I remember from that garden is a load of molehills being in the garden. They looked out across farmers' fields, if I remember correctly. Perhaps Dad will be able to tell me if my memory is correct on that. But I remember all these molehills being in their garden. I know some people get worried about molehills, but I don't think we worry about them anymore. But again, as when they moved into another house, the garden was always very beautiful, very not far from me, actually, funny enough. Very beautiful, very well kept garden, as I remember. My other memories going back. So I guess it's actually my memory from my dad when we when we had lived in a house, obviously, there was an area at the top of the garden that my dad actually turned into a vegetable patch. He built a fence out of pallets, turned it over, and I remember seeing him dig out there, digging over the potatoes and things. Many years later, that was my first vegetable patch as well. And then added to that, my granddad on my mum's side is where my real inspiration comes from in some ways. He had a huge garden house that he paid for the builder to build. But before that, he lived on, or his parents ran a plant nursery. So he was used to selling or growing plants as a child. And when World War II broke out, he had to teach his fellow pupils on how to grow their own food. And I always remember my granddad, especially runner beans, growing runner beans and things like that in his big old garden that he had at the back of his house. So that's just a few memories. Obviously, I've now inherited his own greenhouse. I've also got my step granddad's greenhouse too. It's very confusing, but just a few to start the conversation off. Turbo Stream says, no real memory of my paternal grandparents. My grandmother died a few years after I was born. My granddad died when I was 10. They lived in Goring by Sea, just by me. I was a bit worried that this might bring back some painful memories for some people, but I think there's still a lot of people that it would bring back good memories. So I'm hoping we're going to hit this right. I mentioned cannellini beans, and Jenny is saying she's doing the same as well. Fantastic. I'm hoping this year is going to be the year that we actually get them. Fingers crossed. Stuart Jackson, one of my best memories of gardening with my dad was when we knew he didn't have long left with us. He spent time showing me how to propagate plants, i.e. take cuttings. And I remember Stuart Jackson is actually, I haven't got the phone line open today, I'm afraid, but if you do want to zap in, I'll add the link in the comments thinking about it. If you do want to share your stories. But yeah, Stuart Jackson was one that I was thinking of when approaching this subject, as he said with his dad, and this now has gone on to him selling these plants at the front of his house or at markets and fairs, sort of thing, to aid the charities that he supports. So from these small little cuttings, big things take root. Bit of a fun there. Turbo Stream. My maternal grandfather died when I was 5, so no memory of him. My maternal grandmother moved to Birmingham in 1979, but no gardening with her. It's what about with your parents, Turbo Stream? We'll add parents as well. Kate says, I didn't garden with my grandparents, but when I was little and lived in Portugal, my mum would send me up almond trees to pick them, and I would sit for hours cracking them for my mum to make marzipan. Wow, I didn't realize you lived in Portugal for a bit, but almond trees, what a fantastic things to do. Dad said, yes, you are correct. There was always lots of molehills, and we never any bother other than the humps. Yeah, I remember it was like molehill city. Literally everywhere you went, there was a molehill from memory in that house. Yeah, very fond memories. Very fond memories. Stuart Jackson says, the strawberries weeding, I took most of the plants as well as the weeds. I thought that might happen. Toby Stream says, I don't remember much gardening with my parents, though my mum liked her garden, which is now mine after she died. It's basically the same as she had it. And Toby Stream also adds, my dad hated gardening. There's always some parent. I think my mum's not so keen on gardening, to be fair, but there's always some parents, or one parent, isn't it, that's the driving force behind it. Now, I'm sort of reaching into my memory banks as I chat. One of my memories that I have with my grandfather, and I think anybody who's a gardener would appreciate this. When I was about 10, 11 years, it was that first vegetable pot that I was just turned into this vegetable plot, that first year, grew lots of tomatoes and things like that, and closed it down for the winter because I wasn't quite at the point where I was gardening all year round. But I closed it down for the winter. But this one, it was November, December, I happened to walk up there. It was dark, I remember it, and I was met with a load of horse manure, a huge pile of horse manure in this vegetable bed area. And I was a bit like, well, where the hell has this came from? I don't have horses, didn't have horses. Garden wasn't big enough to have horses. There was this huge, huge pile of horse manure. It turns out that when I went indoors and questioned my mum about this, that was my Christmas present from my granddad, a load of horse manure. I think any gardener can appreciate that. But as a 10-year-old getting horse manure for a Christmas present from your granddad, something really special about that only gardeners can appreciate. Chili Kate says, neither my grandparents nor parents were into veg growing. I think that I partly got my interest from Phil's mum. Can fill us in about Chili Phil's mum? Is she into her gardening? Is she into her veg growing then? Chili, let us know. Let us know. Will I see you on Friday as well at Bewley? Jenny says, my granddad had passed, but my beautiful Nana kept growing tomatoes in his wooden greenhouse. If I close my eyes, I can still hear the wobbly handle turn, the heat and the smell of the tomatoes. You know, every time I smell that smell of tomatoes, I'm taken back to my granddad's greenhouse as well. That smell was always something that I remember it hitting me as soon as that greenhouse was open, and those summer days where it just felt really warm and really inspiring. And as I said, I've inherited my granddad's greenhouse now, and I still get that amazing memory or smell memory hit me every time as well. It's really, I mean, it's really quite interesting, or it's really quite, I can't think of a word, but it's sentimental to be gardening in my granddad's greenhouse that he bought. I think it was the year I was born, with inheritance from his parents that I now have on my allotment. It's something really quite sentimental and special about that greenhouse. Anne says, my parents inspired my gardening, but my grandma inspired self-sufficiency and taking part in flower and veg shows. I didn't even think about, because again, my grandparents were really into the flower and veg shows as well. And I didn't even think about that. But again, your grandma being into self-sufficiency, a lot of people have this sort of attitude. Self-sufficiency, as we know it, is a modern day thing, but we used to remember it, or certainly going through the World War II era, it was a big thing. Scott says, I recently lost my last grandparents, my granddad. He was a king gardener and his garden was always stunning. If he wasn't out there, he would be sat in his chair looking out at it. And the funniest memory of that was he trained his dogs, so when he seen birds near his beds, he would hum the Superman theme tune, and the dog would come running from wherever she was and come and bark at the window. And if that didn't work, she would run into the garden and chase him off. I'm going to try and get Roxy to do that now. You've said that. But what a great memory. What a great memory. Absolutely. Love it. Absolutely fantastic. Digwell says, my only real memory with Dad was sitting in the grass collection bin of the Coolcast cylinder mower when he was trimming the grass. No health and safety in those days. Absolutely. Yeah. Coolcast cylinder mower. Oh, that takes me back. Do they still build cylinder mowers these days? I think they do, but there can't be much call for them anymore. Although people do say that the cylinder mower gives a better cut. Chili Kate says, Phil's mum had a lovely garden and greenhouse. I love that tomato smell. Sadly, she passed away 11 years ago. I'm sorry to hear that. But, yeah, does that tomato smell take you straight back to that greenhouse? It does for me, as I said earlier. Turbo Stream, I didn't even get to share the allotment with my friend either. He died too. You have to laugh really or you get sad. I'm not sad about it, so I aim to keep his plot well worked and tidy. I've got to admit, you know, Yeah, I didn't want this to be a sad thing when we talk about past people that we knew in the past. I want it to be a positive memory, a trip down memory lane. Alex says, my parents were both keen gardeners. Dad did veg, mum did ornamentals. I only got interested shortly before my dad passed, but mum and I had a few years of gardening fun before we lost her. Alex, that is an absolutely lovely, lovely story, I've got to say. I guess in these days, when you're out in that garden, do you get those memories of being out there with your parents as well? And did your dad pass on some of his knowledge? Richard, was his wooden greenhouse Alton's? I have 2x20 Alton's. No, it wasn't. It's a aluminium greenhouse, hence why I've still got it. I don't think it was Alton's. I can't remember the manufacturer. I want to say Qualcast, but I could be wrong on that. Stuart Jackson, my family find it funny when I was young. I would do anything apart from gardening. Now I'm outside every day and even teach children how to garden. I don't know what I would do without my garden. I'm with you on that. I really don't know what I would do without my garden or my allotment, because I am out there every day and it is my sanctuary, my place of I want to be here. It's such a lovely place to go, I think. Yeah. It's interesting how attitudes change as you get older, isn't it? Possibly on Bowling Greens, talking about the cylinder lawnmowers. I think that's probably right, actually. Turbo Stream. My mum had a greenhouse, but gave it away some years back. Would have been useful now. LOL. Yes, hence why I keep inheriting greenhouses, because I can't bear to see them just get thrown in the skip or go to waste. Nigel says the Coolcast factory was about a mile from where I lived. Nigel, just slightly off topic, did you check out what you were messaging me about last night? And have you figured it out? Kate says, on my plot, there's a rhubarb the gentleman before me inherited from his granddad. I'm not related to them, but I'm keeping it going in his memory. I have a plaque made, Tony's rhubarb, so he's remembered. That's really actually very, very lovely. And it reminds me when I moved into a house with my parents, the person who lived in there before, he was a king veg grower as well. And he had this huge rhubarb crown that my stepdad would just run over every year with a lawnmower. It still kept coming back. Rhubarb is so tough. Adrian says, I thought you said wood. No, sorry, I may have slipped up when I was talking about it, but it's aluminium. Sorry, it might have been my fault. Doing these live shows, sometimes I don't. Mouth speaks before the brain engages. Turbo Swim says, as a child, we were pulled around the garden from behind Dad's Suffolk Punch lawnmower. One time on a trolley, probably my only memory of Dad in the garden. Yeah. Yeah. Again, the lawnmowers, being pulled around on lawnmowers, isn't it? It's something about I can't ever remember doing that myself, but that seems to be a consistent memory that I am seeing today. Excellent. Now, I've got to say, I asked for a few of you actually posted some photos related to this, and these have actually been really lovely. I want to share these with you now. So, excuse a spelling mistake in that. Gardening with grandparents. So, first of all, this was from Anne. And she says that her dad was the veg gardener, her mum was the ornamental gardener. And as you can see, they're looking across their garden. I can see their crossed arms, as in, yep, she's always right, isn't it? Absolutely. What a lovely looking garden as well. That must be such a lovely photo to look back on as well. They certainly look like they're enjoying themselves out there. Next, Jenny has shared this photo. We've got more photos coming up a bit later on as well, but Jenny shared this photo. And these pots was it her dad's or her grandparents, one of the two, and she's still using them to this day. Now, this comes back to what I was saying about my greenhouse. I'm growing in that same greenhouse my granddad was growing in, and the tools are still good to this day. It's something really, really precious of that. Now, next, Amanda Joyce. Quite a few photos coming up from Amanda. This is talking of a cylinder lawnmower. I think that is Amanda as a child with her granddad there. But as you can see, that garden already just looks absolutely stunning from this view. We move on. Obviously, must have been probably potatoes, I'm guessing, in here again. If that is Amanda in that picture as well as a young child helping plant those potatoes out. The ridge is all built. Absolutely, these are what the memories that we often forget about. Moving on, this is obviously, I think, her granddad with beans, a wigwam of beans, looking absolutely fantastic. Got to remember that these photos were probably on the old film photos, so very expensive to process, unlike the digital photos we take these days. Next is her granddad again, watering potatoes down one side. Sat in his chair, looking after the place. Absolutely fantastic. Obviously, he looks very happy, it has to be said. Amanda does say that was me 33, 34 years ago with granddad. So that was Amanda as a child in those photos. And there he is amongst, looks like raspberries. Her granddad looks, again, very, very happy and enjoying herself there. Fantastic. So that was the photos that I've seen that we've had posted in the group about gardening with your grandparents. Absolutely lovely to see and very, very, very happy. Jenny says those pots were her granddad's. They're now feeding the fourth generation. I still believe, I'm gonna see if anybody else out there agrees with me. The old tools, the old equipment that my grandparents would buy, they were probably expensive in those days, but they have lasted the test of time. Whereas the stuff we buy these days doesn't seem to last anywhere near as long. That's my observation, and I'm prepared to, if anybody can correct me on that, on what they thought about that, let us know. Digrat says, my dad was heavily into his fuchsia and aruculas. Hope I pronounced that right. Hope to see some nice displays at Malvern. Yeah, Malvern's a few weeks away, isn't it? I'm trying to figure out if I can get there. But fuchsias, always a firm favourite with grandparents as well, wasn't it? Adrian says, on our first farm, my father rotivated too much area to cope with as veg plots and rabbits and other wildlife took over some of the plots. Yeah, I can see that being a problem. Now, one person who I think is going to share some stories is this guy right here. Hello, Stuart.
Hello, good evening.
How you doing, my friend?
I'm all right, apart from the blooming raining, so I have to come in.
Yeah, it's a bit annoying, isn't it?
Yeah. It's been a good day.
Yeah. Now, I've noticed the T-shirt you're wearing looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. bit advertising.
Yeah. So, memories of your grandparents or your parents gardening? Go.
Yeah. As I said earlier, I did very little gardening when I was a kid. I'd do anything to get out of it. I'd even wash the car and things like that. But Dad broke his leg when I was about 11 or 12, and he said, "Could I dig this little bit of ground over?" It was tiny, so I got the fork and I put it straight through my welly, straight through my foot, come out the other end.
Ow!
Yeah, but it missed the bone, so it was all right.
Yeah.
In the old days, and I mean in the old days, you didn't go to hospital. You just went to the river. There was a nurse in the estate I lived on. She pulled it out. She said it was okay. Put a bit of Dettol on it, and it was fine.
Well, I'm guessing you haven't lost your foot, so it must have been fine.
It put me off. Like I said, that it's probably 30 years until I put another fork up. But I tell them, when the kids are carrying their tools wrong, I explain to them that they are tools, not toys, and you've got to take care with them. Yeah. So you know, yes, I put it through my foot, but it's not. It wasn't I didn't hit an artery. I didn't break a bone. You know,
Yeah.
it was clean as a whistle. You know, you soak it in some Dettol, put a plaster on top and bottom, and it'd be fine. But I don't know. I just, you know, I didn't start, as you know, I've been gardening for very long at all. You know, Dad got diagnosed with cancer, and I wanted to carry on what he'd been doing with the sales, and I had to learn fast. You know, we didn't get long, so I had to learn really quick about how to split plants, how to take cuttings. I still struggle with cuttings, and it's like you got a new new spade the other day, a perennial spade.
That's right. Yes.
For splitting plants. It is primarily to split a perennial.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody out there that's ever done it, the first time is really scary.
Yeah.
You think you can kill the plant. It's a bit like a rhubarb, isn't it? When you split your rhubarb.
Yes. Yeah, you've got to sometimes just do it.
Yeah, just got to do it. Yeah, and it took me a long time. I bet 5 or 6 attempts with Dad watching me to be able to do it and have the confidence to just go for it.
Yeah.
And now, and I'm probably like a lot of other people that have had people help them, you hear that voice in your ear. Don't do it like that. Do it like this.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. I wish I'd have listened more when I was younger. I really do. I'd spent more time in the garden because I wouldn't need books anymore. I wouldn't, you know. I have to look things up or post a note on the, you know, on the page and it gets answered.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not, because I've had loads of great advice, you know.
Yeah.
And I think you learn from other people. You never stop learning. The people that think they know it all don't know enough.
Yeah.
That's the way you get it. You know, every day is a school day, regardless where you work, what you do.
Yeah.
I'm going to be learning until the day I die, I think.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember when I started gardening and I took on that veg patch, and I basically did no dig gardening without knowing it was no dig gardening. I just put the compost and the manure on top. And my granddad came along, and reminded of this as you were talking there, and said, "No, you want to dig it in." And he couldn't give me an answer as to why we would dig it in compared to placing it on top. So he just turned around and said, "Well, we'll see what happens in the end." And in the end, it worked out, but he couldn't explain anything about it and still carried on with his way, even though he said your way was so much easier.
It is so much easier. I can't get my head around why people double dig. I just can't get my head around that.
Yeah. Well, because I think it works. It's all down to old ways or what works for some people. Not everything it works for everybody.
No. I don't know. Just no dig just makes life so much easier. So much easier.
Yeah. If you can get a compost, that is.
Well, I've got a load of bark out the front that I've had an area of bark for the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm fed up of just keep topping it up with bark, so I'm taking it off.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll put that in the bin. No, I won't. I'll put it in the compost bin.
Yeah.
Or I'll put it in the mulch. You know, where 5 or 6 years ago, I'd have just chucked it away. Now I know that it could be useful.
Yeah.
You know, so I've mulched some of the garden with it so far, and then the rest to go in the compost bin and break down.
Yeah.
I'll have compost for next time. You know, I won't need to buy it, but that's another subject. Don't get me on compost this week.
Yeah, I'll go through that when we come up with the pictures a little bit later on.
Yeah, as most gardeners, the most expense is our compost.
Yeah.
You know, and it just winds me up.
Yeah,
you know,
but again,
it's so simple.
I wonder how our grandparents coped without the compost being available.
That's probably why they dug, isn't it? To break the soil down and sieve the soil. I can remember Dad sieving soil for seeds.
Yeah.
or go for a walk in the field and get some molehills for seed compost.
Yeah.
But and I do that with the children at school. We collect the molehills in buckets and then we sieve it and we use it. But I just can't. You know, it must have been so hard during the war, digging everything, dig for victory. Once you've dug it and it's good, you shouldn't need to dig it again. That's not. Put the muck on it and let the worms do the work.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, as I say, I wonder what was going on or what's changed. Or has it changed? I don't know. We're getting way ahead.
Labour was cheap, wasn't it? That was the thing. Labour was cheap.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
But, some of them gardeners out there must have some really good stories because I can remember I weeded the strawberries and pulled the plants up, and I know I wasn't the only one. My brother did exactly the same. And my brother's a better gardener than I am, and when we were kids, you'd have never thought that we'd have gardened when we were older because we both hated it.
Yeah.
Absolutely detested it because we were forced to do it as well to earn our pocket money.
Yeah.
I think probably why we didn't want to do it. So I would wash the car, I would wash up, I would do anything but go in the garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
definitely.
But anyway, I better go and let somebody else call in and do some work.
Well, if you think of any more stories, please feel free to share them.
I'll add them in.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, well, you take care. Have a good birthday, mate.
Thank you very much. You take care. Cheers, buddy.
Bye.
Bye. All right, there we go. That was Stuart Jackson. As I said, if you do want to zap in like that, the link is in the comments. Now, I mentioned about old garden tools or grandparents' tools. I gave my nephews my mum's garden tools for his new house. Hopefully, he will use them in his garden. I don't think he is a gardener. Well, at least they're going somewhere that might use them. Andrew Norris has joined. Evening all. Sorry I'm late. Lovely to see you, Andrew. Talking about stories of gardening with your grandparents or your parents, your memories of that. Scott Ambler says, my plot neighbour's dad used to have my allotment. He has passed away now. I keep the plot looking good, and I think my plot neighbour appreciates that someone has it now who gets a lot out of it and looks after it. Also left me with lots of rhubarb plants. Gotta love the rhubarb plants, haven't we? Anne says that was one of her photos. Grandma grew veg and fruit bushes amongst the flowers and kept chickens at the bottom of her garden under the fruit trees. She had no lawn at all and a lovely wooden greenhouse. How lovely is that? How lovely is that? That's the type of garden I like, and I would love to get there one day. We're slowly getting there. We are getting there. Toby Stream says there were some lovely photos. Indeed, there was. And he also says, my brother's mother's in-laws' grandparents were gardeners. She told me how he used cow muck, pot her off homegrown veg for years. And yeah. Ginny Phil, as Kate said, I get the gardening bug from my mum, would always help her out and like a good scout would build her runner bean wigwams every year. He also goes on, sadly, I also now hate rhubarb and gooseberries as she grew so much we had to eat it all the time. I promised Kate to try her rhubarb again this year, though. Rhubarb is one of those, we get a lot of rhubarb. Trying to find ways to use up rhubarb is challenging. We made some rhubarb stew to keep when we need it, but we're going to make crumbles, vodka. Well, not vodkas for us, but you get the idea. Things that we can do with rhubarb. My experience of my grandfather and gardening was me doing the work and the grandfather sitting and watching. He wasn't stupid. He knew what he was doing there. Digwell, this was something that Stuart said. There are many so-called expert channels who would do well to listen to Stuart's advice. If you think you know it all, then you know diddly squat. I agree with that. I'm also a firm believer that people who call themselves experts will share from their own experience, their own soil, their own conditions, but that may not work for everyone. And I was thinking about this earlier. I had a conversation with Charles Dowden on the podcast, and he mentioned that there's so much bad advice just go out there. And I thought, I'm not saying Charles Dowden is wrong, of course, but I thought it may just be the different circumstances that people find themselves in that what works best for them. Turbo Stream says, this week I mulched my onions after a top tip from some bloke on the Veg Grower podcast this week. Chopped up leaves from the bottom grate. Indeed. Yeah, we're all getting those mulching coming in now, isn't it? I pulled the leaves back after a few days to put some chicken manure pellets down. Saw loads of worms only after a few days. Absolutely. Coming quick, don't they? Alison O'Brien says, evening all. I have done my cucumber seeds, salad seeds too, etc. It's certainly feeling like seed sowing time is here now, isn't it? Very, very busy time. Double digging loosens compacted soil. Essential if you want to grow decent carrots or parsnips in open ground. Also helps break up the clay soil. This was something that Stuart and I were discussing. And again, my granddad would swear by double digging, and I did no dig. And actually, when you talk about carrots and the break clay soil, obviously where I was, we had a beautiful loamy soil. Here, the clay soil. We can grow decent carrots, but we're only just getting there now with plenty of compost added over the years to break down that soil. I am back over here now. Just fancy the change. LOL. I'm not sure who that is. Probably Stuart. I could be wrong. Jenny says, my nana's lady's fork is rotted, so I varnished it, and it is now a perch for the garden robin. Her son, my uncle, was Robin's. He has also passed, so I have a robin on her fork handle. Heartwarming. That's lovely. That is a really lovely story, actually. I really like that. Really like that. Margaret says, my wonderful Uncle Stan was a gardener. He had a fabulous garden in Lancing full of fruit and veg. My memories were of the fig tree. What a treat that was. In later life, he would watch my sister and I if we went near the fruit and shout, don't you touch those figs or those gooseberries. Very happy days. Oh, I do love a good fig tree. Do love a good gooseberry. Fig tree. I mean, fig tree is one of those. Oh, I've always felt fig trees are often overlooked because I know a lot of people aren't very keen on figs or unsure what to do with figs. But I love them. I absolutely love them. And I've had to repot my fig tree this week actually to get into a bigger pot. Hopefully, this is a year we're going to get figs. You can hopefully. Digwell says rhubarb and custard cake is very nice. Nudge, nudge. I did rhubarb crumble cake usually, but rhubarb and custard cake. Is there a video for that, Digwell, by any chance? Adrian says, when I came, there was a amount of rhubarb which suddenly died when my wife came here. She does not like rhubarb. I'm sure it was not really to do with her. I've had one rhubarb crown die on my allotment for some weird reason. It's so rare for rhubarb to struggle though. Rhubarb is so tardy that it is very, very rare. Now, Digwell says clay is one of the best soils, full of minerals, etc., etc. I'd agree. I prefer the loamy soil, but clay is good, full of minerals, but it's very, very wet, and it takes a while to warm up. Stuart says, if I told my children at school I knew everything, they wouldn't listen as well. I very often to say to the class, we will learn together. I like that. I really like that method, Stuart. Learning together with the children. Now, talking of learning question, Lynn B has a question. Good evening, everyone. Question, please, Richard. Can you overwater seeds? I planted some beans and wildflowers about 3 weeks ago. I've raked over the soil gently and nothing there. It is possible to overwater them. You know, if they're in too waterlogged, they can rot away. But if these are outside, it was probably a bit early to sow beans outside unless they were broad beans. But it's also possible that birds or mice have come along and eaten them up as well. So that would be my guess. Birds have probably come along and eaten the seeds, the wildflower seeds, or mice and the beans, and probably more likely. Scott says this week's topic got me thinking about my favourite book, Monty and Sarah Don's Dual Garden. He shares his childhood memories and also used to do anything else but help in the garden if he could get away with it. It's a great book, well worth a read. I think I might have that book somewhere. I haven't read it though. Let's have a look. What else have we got? So I meant to say thanks to Digwell for the rhubarb recipe. There's obviously a rhubarb recipe on his YouTube channel, making a rhubarb and custard cake video. So go check that out after this show if you are looking for ways to use up rhubarb. Turbo Stream, oh, figs. My maternal grandmother gave me fig rolls when we went to York to see her. Yum, 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 yum. Yeah. There you go. I told you, isn't it? Once you start down this rabbit hole, the memories start coming back, especially with this conversation. Limby says they are in a greenhouse covered in a plastic covering I made. Then it's possible they got, if they're, I mean, you've got to really sit them in water for them to rot. If they're in a greenhouse, it's possible they've got overwatered, but it would have to be a lot of water. A lot of water. What else have we got? Adrian says, it often amazes me and saddens me that the people who love garden often have very gardens. Often amazes and saddens me that the people who love garden often have very, I think that's small gardens, I think that's meant to be. I think they're the ones you hear about more, in all honesty. Anne says, I inherited 2 of my grandfather's rakes from my father. The shafts were well polished from years of use, and I inherited my grandmother's preserving pans for chutney and jams. How lovely. How lovely. Do you get that feeling when you're out using these tools or these pans that you're following the steps of your grandparents? That's what I often feel as well when I use the greenhouse, for example. I do have a gardening book from my dad's collection, Jeff Hamilton. It was Dad's a Bible, says Stuart. Jeff Hamilton, what a gardener. Indeed, indeed. Digwell says fig rolls keep you loose. Jenny, I've just planted my rhubarb next to my wildlife pond. That actually would work really well, I think. It will offer plenty of shade. Rhubarb loves a lot of moisture. So I think that'll do really well next to the wildlife pond. Chili Kate says that's why we get allotments, Adrian, in reply to the small gardens. And Limby says she's going to try planting those plants again. Excellent. Right. Let's do a grow along video. And this time it's beetroot that you guys said that you wanted me to sow this week. Right. Well, it's time for another grow along. And I'm at my large veggie pod at the moment because this is where we're going to be sowing beetroot. The variety I've chosen is called Chugia. So all we're going to do is make a line in the soil, put the label in as always, open the packet up and sprinkle these seeds in. Now these are a red and white stripy type of beetroot, so they should do pretty decently and a bit interesting as well. Now, a few weeks ago I actually sowed beetroot using Charles Dowding's multi-sown method, where you sow 3 seeds per plug plant and then plant each plug plant out. And they are also grown in this veggie pod. They're doing pretty well, but for this I'm just going to grow them in a row, in a line, and then thin them out as they grow. Reason being, the multi-sown method that Charles Dowding recommends is a great way to grow beetroot, but some beetroot seeds are multi-jam, so you might get more than 1 beetroot from each seed. So I've decided this variety, we're doing it in a row, straight line, and we'll thin them out as they grow. Now the good thing with beetroot is the leaves are actually edible, so they're great to use in various other salads and things like that as well. So you can actually get 2 harvests from each beetroot. looking after them is really easy. We let them to grow, wait for them to germinate, we thin them out once they start to grow. We can eat the thinnings, don't forget, and then we take what's left, continue to let them grow until you want to get them to about the size of a golf ball, and then we will harvest them, and that's it. As easy as that. Don't need much in the way of feeding. As long as you've got good compost, they look after themselves. Now, as you know, in these grow-alongs, let us know your beetroot growing tips down below in the comments. Love to hear more from it. There we go. Beetroot is sown. This was what you guys just chose for me to sow. You chose it a couple of weeks ago, actually. So we're out of ideas for next week's grow along. But if you want to share something that I should sow next week, then hit it up in the comments right now. Now, I've got some photos here. This was the spring onions that Digwell suggested after we had him on. As you can see, they're growing nicely. They're going to need thinning out soon, but the spring onions are there and growing away. We've also got, these are the melons that we sowed for the melon grow along. As you can see, they are growing. They are just starting to grow and show themselves. And I think the week after we did these cucumbers as well. Again, they are starting to show themselves. They are very early still, but we are getting there with all these, all these seedlings. Let us know in the comments what you want me to sow next week. Jenny says, I'm off to Jeff Hamilton's garden soon. Jenny, let us take lots of photos or videos and share them with us. Love to see that. Digwell says, regarding to the rhubarb, it's next to his wildlife pond as well. Stuart says, I remember Dad talking about Jeff Hamilton, having read his book, he was well before his time with a lot of things. Certainly organic gardening, I believe. He was well ahead of his times. Only multi-sow monogerm beetroot. That's it. That's what I was trying to explain. Only sow monogerm. Jenny says, oh, yes, of course. I remember from your video, Great Minds talking about the wildlife pond, of course. I find the seed packets that seal at the base annoying. It upsets my yin-yang, lol. I sowed a row of beetroot this week, 3 inches apart. There we go. There we go. Lynn says, will you water them in, Richard? I didn't. The compost was already moist anyway because I'd watered it the night before. But because it was raining today, I knew they were going to get a good watering anyway. So that's what we've done. Have you started runner French beans yet? I haven't yet. No, they are on my list of things to sow this week. And Nicholas saying sweet corn is for one for grow along as well. So 2 suggestions or 3 suggestions. Let me know out of the 3 so far what you think I should do. I'm leaning towards sweet corn at the moment because I want to grow a lot of sweet corn this year. But runner and French beans are also a possibility too. Jenny says, Richard, it's maybe 1 hour away from Ghana as well. Maybe swing past if you have a day off after the show. Are you talking about the one in Birmingham or Bewley for Jeff Hamilton's show? If it's one in Bewley, then it's probably easier for me to get to. Let us know. Lynn B. Okay. I think I'm a bit water mad and should stop. So when it comes to watering, particularly seeds, I think what you've got to remember is they need free draining soil. So what I mean by that, I've only got this as an example. So if this was full of compost, this glass, and we poured the water into it, the water's got nowhere to go. So it's going to build up, and then it'll rot the seeds away. If we had loads of holes in the bottom, that water can escape out. The compost should be moist, but free draining. And that should stop any seeds from rotting, in theory. Hope I've explained that well enough. It's more about, you can water several times a day if need be. It's just about making sure it's free draining and the water escapes. Turbo Stream says, I have Jeff Hamilton's book, watched him on Gardener's World. Perhaps he was my inspiration to grow stuff. I've just started watching Gardener's World on YouTube, funnily enough. I've actually started watching it, believe it or not. I haven't watched this week's yet, though. SweetCon sounds good for next week, and Rebecca is also saying SweetCon would be nice. Looks like we're going to be doing SweetCon next week. That's great because I need to get some SweetCon in. Jenny says Birmingham. Jeff Hamilton's garden is about an hour from Birmingham, so that's all right. I'm up in Birmingham a few times in the next few months, so I will possibly pop by there. Learning all the time. Love the tips here. That's what it's all about. I'm not sure what that was. Jeff Hamilton's Barnsdale is Oakham, Rutland. What's that place ring a bell? What's that name ring a bell, that place? But yeah, I will go there one day. I keep saying I need to go to more and more gardens, visit more and more gardens. And that was always the plan with camper van. I just haven't been able to do it anywhere near as much for various reasons. Jenny says peat free can look dry, but it is damp underneath. Poke your finger in to see. It's very misleading. Yeah. As you saw in the veggie pod, it looked dry on top, but it's wet underneath. Yes, please, to SweetCon and 3 varieties. Keep sharing your beetroot growing tips, please, as well. Really want to try and encourage the tips on those. And I put the grow along videos out as separate videos as well. I want to try and get tips on those too. With seedlings or seeds, just use a water sprayer just to keep it damp, not wet, says Stuart. Yeah, that was something I was thinking of as well. But yeah, spray it. Digwell says Jeff Hamilton was probably the last TV gardener who was not in it for the glory. I don't know what you mean, Digwell. Aren't all these gardeners not in it for the glory? Jenny says it's yes, of course, it's where you are. That's why it rings a bell, of course. Rutland's smallest county. And Rebecca says, it's amazing, Richard, you should visit. Yeah, okay. Nigel agrees with Digger, our last proper gardener who wasn't trying to be a personality. I can't comment because as I said, I never really watched it, but I'll take your word on that. But don't you think to be on TV, people need to have a bit of personality about them to make them entertaining or watchable? Just a question I'm going to throw out to you guys out there. Turbo Stream says, I remember Arthur Billet too, shot in Kings Heath Park, Birmingham, not far from me. I've never heard that name, in all honesty. Shows my age, I suspect. Be careful to keep the 3 varieties away from each other if they are in the same sweetness class, says Digwell, talking about the SweetCon. Interesting. Stuart says, the water sprayer, I stole the idea from Richard. Yes, I do use a water sprayer. It's when they are young, very young. Nigel says, today's TV gardeners are image driven and the gardening comes second. Interesting take on that. This is something I'm going to debate a little. Again, I'm taking your word on it because I don't watch TV. I think I've said time and time again, I don't watch TV. I struggle, especially with gardening. But don't you think gardening is a very visual thing anyway? I kind of get what you're saying, actually. They talk about watching Gardeners World. There's a lot of showing the gardens, but not enough about how to garden. I'm with you now. And Digwell's just put a comment. Jeff did gardening and the TV followed. So that's a very interesting comment. Interesting comment, because I've worked with people who have worked in TV. Some of you will know who I'm talking about. But he's always said to me that when you're making a video, you are making a video. You are not gardening, you are making a video. That is the priority. So I find that interesting, that take. Because there's something, yeah, it's interesting. Arthur Belay owned Clacks Farm near Ombersley. I went to a few of his open days. Oh, how lovely. Oh, I'm going to have to check. So I don't watch TV, so this is all new to me. Stuart says, I don't watch Gardener's World. I watch Beech Grove instead. Much better. Stuart, is Beech Grove on YouTube or somewhere where I can watch it where I don't need the TV license? Because I don't have the TV license. Rebecca says, not so sure that Monty Don is a right scruffy bugger. He's not as scruffy as me, I can say that. I think I've noticed that Monty's so far this year been less as the lead presenter. Do you think he's getting ready to retire? I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I'm just asking the question. Turbo Stream says Clacks Farm might have been ITV then from King's Heath. Don't know. Dear Grouse says, to put it in perspective, Top Guy used to be about cars. Now it is about people who like cars. Are we talking the original series, or when Clarkson, May and Hammond were in it, or I haven't watched it in years, so I don't know who's presenting it now. But if it's the original series, I always thought that was more about the cars as well. Beech Grove is on the BBC, and Rebecca says, I love Beech Grove. It seems to be real gardening. I just don't. Beech Grove is on Scottish TV and BBC too, so I can't watch it then. If it's not on YouTube or Netflix or Prime, I can't. Or basically, if it's on the BBC and iPlayer only, I can't watch it. I can watch ITV on their streaming service and all the other channels on their streaming service. Basically, as I said, don't have a TV license, so I don't watch it. Peter Seabrook was a real English gentleman, very humble bloke. Yeah, Peter Seabrook, one of the nicest people I've ever met. So welcoming, I have to say. Termstream, I watched the YouTube gardeners. Obviously, my favourite post on this live stream. Yeah, of course. All the YouTube gardeners are, I think, better. Having met him a few times, Monty Don does not have the same persona as when the cameras are rolling. I'm staying quiet on that one. Yeah. Gardening TV shows used to be about gardening. They are about people who like gardening. It's interesting. That's interesting. Perhaps we need to design our own gardening TV show one day. We try and talk about gardening on this show, but it's all about everyone joining in the conversation and sharing their ideas. Is my thinking on it. Jenny says they filmed the original Top Gear near to me, huge airfield. They filmed the second series at Dunsfold one near me as well, funny enough. So yeah, I used to go there quite often. Ballysillian, Top Gear was never about cars, at least the cars we would drive. I think the original series was a bit more about the cars from memory, because I used to remember on a Friday night it was on, and there was a lot of talk about. This is obviously before the Clarkson took over it before it got cancelled first time. I remember it being all about the cars people could buy and what have you. Stuart says, I will have a look for Beech Grove on YouTube and let you know. Also, Monty is not interested in children. When we did the Shogun, it was only Frosty that came over and spoke to the children. I've got to admit, I do like Frosty. A lot. as many people have said, Beech Grove is more down to earth gardening and very practical. I've yet to watch it. If I can find it on YouTube, I will watch it. Jeff Hamilton had a twin brother who people used to stop in the street and mistake him for Jeff. They would ask him questions about the plants, to which he always replied, "Cut it down to the ground and it should come back. If not, you need a new one." That's a good tip, isn't it? That is a very good tip. Cut it down to the ground and it should come back. If it doesn't, you need a new one. Time Extreme says, Shaw Garner's World was produced at Pebble Mill, just down the road from me. Cycled past the site only this morning. I think Garner's World has moved quite a few times, hasn't it? From where it was originally filmed and where it is now. Idaho's joined. Sorry, I'm very late. No problem, Idaho. Lovely to see you. Idaho, as you are here, share your memories of gardening with your grandparents or your parents. At this point, I need to remind everybody, if you are enjoying this show, please do give us a thumbs up, a like, a follow and subscribe, and don't forget to click the notifications so that you know when we go live. The channels and the social media following is actually growing quite nicely at the moment. We still want more, of course. The more people we get in to come into this circle, the better it is for all of us, because we can all share our tips and tricks, etc., etc. If only we had everybody from the that listened to the podcast, we would be well away. Digwell says, design our own show. No one would follow us. The way we watch TV now has changed. No one cares about the subject anymore. They just want to see the stars of the show. So for me, the star of the show is the vegetables and how we're growing it. I mean, this is going to be one to we'll have to do an episode dedicated to this one day. Design our own gardening TV show and how we would run it. That's something we could do. I think Jeff Hamilton brother runs his garden now, says Stuart. Could be. And Scott says, Grow, Cook, Eat is a good TV show, Irish show, but on Amazon, I think. Grow, Cook, Eat. I don't think I've seen it, but I will look that up. And if it is, I'll be watching that as well. So there is a lack, I feel, of good gardening shows on the likes of Netflix or Amazon Prime. I'm going to throw this out there. If anybody is watching that would like to commission us to do some gardening shows for Netflix or Amazon Prime, get in touch. There's something we might be able to do. I think there is a calling for it anyway. Jenny says, is Jeff's son Nick? He is lovely and sounds just like him. Excuse me. Bally says, for next week, do you soak the sweet corn kernels the night before so we can join in? Personally, I don't. I just sow them straight in the soil. But what we might do, I'll make a note of that, sweet corn, soak sweet corn. We will try both ways and see what grows first, as you've mentioned that. Idaho says, my first active garden experience was with my grandmother giving me some narcissi bulbs. She brought them to our house and she helped me plant them. I forgot about them until my dad showed me. Excellent. The good old daffodils starting you off. Ernie says, Richard, today's tier divisions are simply style over substance. But again, I know exactly where you're coming from, but then why are people still watching them? Why is Gardener's World one of the most popular gardening TV shows on the TV or on the TV? Is there any more popular? Is there any YouTubers that are more popular than Gardener's World? I'll put it like that then. I know they bloomed. I was so surprised and happy. It inspired me to grow more. Excellent. And she was 4 years old at that point. Excellent. That's what we like to hear. I tell you what, let's quickly go to some more photos, that is. These are just the photos that you guys have sent in or posted in our Facebook group. Now, Stuart Jackson, we mentioned this earlier. He found this in a bag of compost. It's a copper ring. We've spoken a lot about the troubles we've had with good quality compost and finding things in compost that we really shouldn't find. A copper ring should be one of the easiest things to find. But there it was. There it is. It's clearly, it looks to be quite thick, and it's clearly gone through a machine to get squashed like that as well. Scott has shared this photo of his garden bench, which is looking really full of lots of plants. It looks like lots of onions. There's kale, cabbages, all looking great, I've got to say. Lots going on there. The Chili Kate and Chili Phil, they've built this compost bin. They said that when they first took on the allotment, they put up a temporary one. This is their permanent one, which looks great, I've got to say. The good old pallets coming into action again. Kate's polytunnel is well underway with the tomatoes. I'm actually quite jealous of those tomatoes. They look to be really far ahead compared to mine. So very, very good show. Very good growing. If Kate, if you're still watching, well, those tomatoes started off in the hydroponics that you've been doing. Nicole has been making this compost area, again inspired by Charles Dowding, and basically putting a roof over the top to catch rainwater and keep the compost going. It looks fantastic, I've got to say. Looking forward to see the end result. So yeah, that's the photos. I've only chosen one from each person. I was a bit rushed. As I said, it's my birthday, so I've been a little bit busy, as you can imagine. But keep emailing those pictures to me, richard@theventuregroundpodcast.co.uk. You can put them in our Facebook group. You can send to me via social media. So there we go. Keep sending those photos. I really do love seeing all these photos that are going on. Jeff Hamilton had an identical twin brother named Tony. That was Margaret was mentioned that as well. Jenny says, I listened to a great podcast with an ITV producer. He explained why the film, what they film, and the show types. There are some programs coming this summer for gardeners. What podcast was that, Jenny? Let me know. If you can send me the link, that would be great. Idaho says, I agree, Ernie. It is entertainment, not necessarily education. I find this really interesting because it goes against everything that I've been taught about filmmaking as well. I say taught. It's like the old, obviously, TV tend to change the shot every 2-3 seconds, depending on what they're trying to, or the emotions they're trying to do. And that's meant to keep the viewers engaged for a bit longer. And I do believe it works, but it's very difficult to do. And TurboStream, Gardener's World was very busy last year, so it must have an audience. We are mainly a veg garden audience, which isn't catered for on TV. You've got a good point there. We are mainly a veg garden audience, which isn't catered for on TV, as far as I'm aware, anyway. As I said, I think there is something in there. YouTube gardeners may not be more popular than Gardener's World, but they are certainly a lot cheaper. Yeah, that's true. They are certainly a lot cheaper, and they don't necessarily try and sell you expensive stuff. I find with YouTube gardeners, again, Gardener's World. I'm not going to slate Gardener's World. It's catering to its audience, but as I think we are veg gardeners, so that's what we want. Oh, did I say Nick? I thought I said Nicola. Did I say Nicole? Sorry. Very sorry. Sorry. And again, sorry. Hargrave Gas. I don't have any parental or grandparent memories of gardening, but there was a lady I called Aunt Margaret who used to tell me about fruit growing. I now have a quince tree and apricot like her. Quince and apricot are very rare to hear about people growing in their gardens, but great stuff. Kate says those tomatoes were started off in hydroponics, came out really strong. Those hydroponic systems do seem to start off some very, very good plants. Very good plants. Digwell says, I'm going for the food show this year. Not over impressed with the Gardener's World side of things last year. That was Gardener's World at Birmingham. Bewley, the one at Bewley is this weekend, next weekend. I cannot wait to go. It is a lot of gardening going on. It helps, I think it helps that it's set in Bewley where there are gardens to go and have a look around. Same as the autumn one at Audley End House. Birmingham, you know, the NEC is great, but there's not really gardens in the same way. I'll still be going to Gardener's World. I can guarantee you that. B-Roll has no place in practical gardening video. Depends how it's done. Depends how it's done, Digwell, is what I say to that. I think there is a lot to be said for B-Roll, in my opinion, if it's done right. I often, usually with grow logs, I didn't do it today, but I often have 2 or 3 cameras set up that I can just change position in the edit for that very reason. Stuart says, we won't get another gardening TV program until a high-profile celebrity starts saying it's cool to go gardening. I will stick to YouTube as most channels don't talk down to you, says Stuart. That's interesting. That is a very, very interesting point. And I still feel there is a lot of call for it on TV. In the current climate, veg is more practical than a nice-looking flower border. And I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. But how do we how do we get this point across? I think it's the same with the shows. Slightly different slightly off topic, but it's the same as the shows, isn't it? I've heard that a lot of the veg shows are being reduced down quite a bit this year. And there was a show many years ago called the Edible Garden Show. Unfortunately, I think they did a few years of a show and then it got cancelled for some reason. And I know Nigel and I have talked about this before. It needs to come back because it was a really good show. It catered for everybody who was interested in growing food. Scott says, does anybody remember the Big Allotment channel? It was like the Bake Off. They all got given an allotment and then got set challenges. It was on the BBC, but is on YouTube now. Yeah, I did actually watch the Big Allotment Challenge. Jib, the guy who did the judging, absolutely lovely bloke as well, and I've seen him. The trouble with a Big Allotment channel is the allotment was set in a stately home, if I remember correctly, and I didn't feel it was representative of what an allotment is really like. It was very much, let's cram as much as we can get in. You look after it. I think they were there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The rest of the week, the gardeners came along to look after it, not the people who actually supposedly grew it. I didn't feel it was truly representative of what an allotment is like, but it was a good idea at the time. Rebecca says, I enjoy the garden shows, to be honest. Don't feel we have nearly enough gardening on TV, so grateful for anything. I agree. Yeah. Allotment challenge was good, but it cost too much to make and the gardens had to be looked after all year round. They should have based it on people's own garden. That's my thought as well. It would have been difficult to judge, but it would have been fine. Gardener's World isn't for everyone, but I must say hat off to Monty, who let the BBC take over his garden and set up a camera on tracks, etc., so he could film on his own and still deliver a show every week in lockdown. Yeah, but you know, again, you know, this is exactly it. This is how Gardener's World had to go ahead. It had to be filmed in some way. So yeah, well done to Monty for that. I mean, B-roll where the shot gets totally away from the subject matter, like growing Swede, then pan into the seaside. I get what you're saying. But Swede Sweet love it by the seaside, says Nigel. I kind of get what you're saying when the B-roll isn't related to the subject matter. But I find that in Gardener's World when I've been watching that as well. You got Monty talking about something and it cuts away to something else going on. So I get what you mean by the B-roll. This to non-video makers, the B-roll is the little clips or little bits that you see that go over the main track. Turbo Stream says, I bet the veg show benches would have been popular with our grandparents' generation, probably the main aim for the gardening year. I think our grandparents probably more grew for food, though, to be fair. Especially the World War II generations, the rationing generations. What else? Jim Buttress was the judge. Rob Smith has made a good gardening journalist career from it. Yeah, I think he's the only one I remember winning from it as well. I can't remember who else won and if they did anything from it. But Jim Buttress was very good. A lot of, I'm sure, Nigel, if you must have met him at some of the events. I saw him at Gardener's World last year. Lovely bloke. What else? Scott's saying, agree. Would have been better had they just picked people in their own allotments. That's what I thought with the big allotment channel. It would have been better if they picked people in their own allotments. But it would have been difficult, I guess, then when it comes for making sure nobody cheats. Which that segues into something I do want to remind everybody about, the Alternative Veg Grower Show. We have got a video up in the YouTube channel. There is a post on our website as well about it. And as you probably remember, I can't remember them off the top of my head. I know we've got the biggest or the best melons and things like that, the wheelbarrow and all things like that for a competition. Has everybody been thinking about it, starting to think about what they are going to be featuring or hoping? I need to remind everybody about that. I need to set up some sort of reminders about it. But yeah, don't forget the Alternative Veg Grower Show, which is going on in October on this very channel right here. We could do our own allotment channel, pick 6 to 8 different seeds to grow, then cook 1 meal per veg, says Stuart. That's the Alternative Veg Grower Show. That sort of thing. Yeah, we could do something like that. Gardening shows on TV have to cater for a huge audience, and it's very difficult to please everyone. I enjoy it, even though I doze off if they have a feature on growing just dahlias, etc. I think you saw Gardener's World last week, then. Didn't they feature dahlias last week? Trouble. I've said this a lot with like Gardener's World. It has to cater for a wide range of people. You got your veg growers, you got your ornamentals, you got your perennials, you got your fern growers, you got people who just like all different gardens. And if it was just the veg growing, I think on something like Gardener's World, it would get boring quite quickly. But I still think for the veg growing side, there's still something there. Our village did a show at the end of October last year and then sold all the entries off. So not much apart from roots and squashes. And I don't want to grow and go home without my veg. Yeah, I can understand that. It's difficult for these shows, but I have heard there are a lot of things that are being cancelled this year. In reality, these TV gardeners cannot manage these huge gardens in pristine condition and still spend days away filming other things. So how do they do it? An army working behind the scenes. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody, I think even the TV people would tell you there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that goes on. Monty has admitted he has people working his garden with him. I think he's got 3 people plus for when it comes to the big stuff, he can ring up a guy he employs to do the big pieces as well. So there is a lot of smoke and mirrors, but to the untrained people, and it's the same with magazines, they see us all making it look easy, and people who are inexperienced think that's all they have to do, and there's not the showing of the actual work that goes on behind. Scott says, this week's Gardener's World, I enjoyed more about growing veg this week. I will be watching that later on this evening. Digwell says ours are left at the end to give away at the exhibitor's discretion. Talking about the food that goes away, indeed. Nigel says, at Malvern Autumn Show, some of the quality veg are raffled off at the end of the show. See, I think, isn't Malvern one of the few veg shows that is still going ahead? There was a post about it the other day in the group. Somebody had said or shared a news article. It was quite interesting reading, actually, of these shows that are reducing the categories down. Possibly because there was too many categories. I don't know. I think Digwell knew a bit more about it from what I saw. Sorry, I've got to keep my throat lubricated at times. When Monty goes, then I think it will be the end of Gardener's World as we know it. No credible replacement at present. I think Adam Frost will be taken over, but I think what they're going to do is more like a joint presenter. So Adam Frost, Francis Tophill, and Rachel Dethame. I think they will be like the top presenters, taking it in turn each week so they can get different gardens. I could be wrong, but that's my prediction based on what I'm seeing at the moment. Hope that has a little vodka in for your birthday, says Rebecca. I don't drink, so it doesn't, no. But yeah. I've set my birthday celebration. I've set my hot tub up, and I'm going to be enjoying using that. Jenny says, I couldn't leave mine behind. Maybe if we had noticed, I could have grown something specially, but I grow to be sufficient. Talking about these shows, maybe I'll take a shark fin melon vines with fruits this year. I don't know if anybody follows Saul Walker. Him and Lucy do the other podcast, the Head Gardener podcast. I can't think. Talking Heads podcast. And I saw that he'd a few shark fin melons from last year's harvest. He put a picture up on Twitter, I think it was. So, excuse me, I'm looking forward to these shark fin melons. Nigel says Chris Beardshaw would be a good Gardener's World presenter. He did a great job at Beach Grove. He's good on Radio 4 as well, I find. Entertaining, I find, with him. Anna Jones, Carol Klein has been overlooked for too long. She is excellent. Malvern Autumn Show is not an RHS show, so they have more say with what happens, and it's cheaper than a spring one. Much better show anyway. I've got to get to Malvern Autumn one year. I'm hoping to get to the spring one. It all depends on what happens this year. The post was about some shows cancelling. My reply was about the shows reducing classes, much to many exhibitors discussed. There we go. I like that. I like that. Jenny says Talking Heads. That's it. Talking Heads. The other. It's great. I follow them both. Lots of info, etc. Yeah. They're my proteges, as I like to call them. They started their podcast because of me. My claim to fame. Ian Meadows, evening. Sorry, I'm late. I've been watching the footy semi. It's their football one. Lovely to see you, Ian. Hope you are well. Rebecca says, I like Toby. Think he'll be a good replacement. What's his surname? Were you talking about Toby? Oh, because he did present it for a while, didn't he? In between Monty. And he did make quite a few. Toby Buckland. He made quite a few changes, including like a cool wall type thing. But unfortunately, it wasn't well received, as I remember correctly. If you're talking about Toby Buckland, that is, I'm pretty sure you are. When he presented it, it went wrong. Running late, looking great, says Skinny Jim Gardner. Lovely to see you, buddy. Hope you are all well. We're talking about memories of your grandparents or gardening with your parents, but we're also heading down to the cool wall. We're heading down to this avenue of talking about TV gardening. Jenny says, "Oh, I didn't know that, Richard. I often chat on lives with Lucy. I'll mention I follow you. Yeah, mention me. Yeah, they two of my very good gardening buddies, Lucy and Saul, and me and Skinny Jean kind of gave them the inspiration to start their own podcast." Toby Buckland was the main Gardener's World presenter, but they changed the format and people turned it off. That's it. It was a shame. It was a shame. Toby Buckland was a brief stand-in. I thought he was the main presenter for a period when Monty Don stood down, but then came back. But he made so many changes that it wasn't well received, as I remember it as well. As I remember, when Monty had a minor stroke. Was there a minor? Was it? I thought he actually. It was about. I think. Yeah. I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm not going to pretend to. I just remember reading what that was. Toby Buckland was set up to fail. Yeah. Well, yeah. Because he did that more Top Gear style gardening show. I think that's what he was bringing in at the time, wasn't it? Toby was bringing it in to be a more of a more like Gardener's World, but it didn't go down well at all. He did things like the cool wool, so there was. Perhaps we could do that on this show. A cool wool, a plant of a cool wool. That's a feature we could add at some point. I've got to. Perhaps it'll work. Perhaps it won't work. I don't know. Ian says, "I like Percy Thrower. He's the original, wasn't he? He was one of the older." Skinny Monty quit due to health issues. Toby took over. Monty decided he wanted to come back. Toby got knocked off. I thought it was something along those lines. Obviously, you've probably spoken to Toby quite a bit over the years. He's also a very nice bloke. I've got to say, Toby Buckland. I've met him a couple of times now. Very nice bloke. To be fair, the producers changed the format. Toby was unlucky to present it when they did. I think you're probably right there. I think there were things added, like the cool wool and things like that just didn't seem to go down well. But I think there's something for it. I think there was there was definitely something in it. Shame, because I do like Toby Buckland. Ian Meadows is saying, "Am I giving my age away now?" Yeah, you are. You can't all be 25 like me. Right, we are coming to the end of this week's show. So next week we're going to be sowing sweet corn. As I've said, we're going to try soaking the sweet corn and sowing the sweet corn straight in and see if there is any difference. Next week, what was it going to be about? How do you store your pots, your plastic pots, or any of those empty pots? How do you store them? I want to know a bit more about that. Reason being, I've cleared a lot of pots away and I'm trying to find good ways to store them. So how do you store your pots? And for a bit of homework, I want to see your pot storage systems, how you do that. So that's next week's plan sorted out. We'll just quickly finish off these comments and we'll start getting out of here. I still think the Skinny Jean Gardener would be good for Gardener's World, says Stuart. Yeah, I think you could be right. I think it could be for the kids Gardener's World. I think it could be good as well. Gardening in black and white to Ian Meadows, indeed. Jenny says, "I love Monty. I met him a few years ago. He gives lovely hugs. Nick Bailey is also great, and he also gives great hugs. I seem to hug a lot of gardeners." There we go. Rebecca says, "Good night, everyone. See you next week." Digwell says, "Make sure you soak and not soak the same variety." Yeah, I was thinking that as well. It won't be a fair trial. I was thinking that as well, funny enough. Ian Bennett, shirt and tie at the potting bench for Percy Thrower, indeed. Thanks for another great week. Looking forward to it next week. And thank you very much. Beasting Throat used to far too many strong chemicals. It was the done thing back then, though, wasn't it? It was very much the done thing. Alison O'Brien, great show again. Thank you very, very much. That's been very enjoyable tonight. It's been great hearing all these ideas and what have you. So, yeah, I am setting myself up. Let's get out of here because I have got some cake I want to go and eat. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back again next Sunday at 6 p.m. If you're going to Gardener's World Fair at Bewley on Friday, let me know. And if you see me there, pop up and say hello. Right, you take care, guys. I'll see you again next time.